Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and this evening we're going to get an update on the city's DEI&B. And to help us understand it better, who better than the director of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, Wangari Fahari. Welcome, Wangari.
Thank you for having me.
So you've been on the job for about a year now.
Yes.
And what do you think of Beverly?
So far, so good. I'm about to finish a year at the end of February.
Yeah.
So it's pretty close, and a year is a long time to be in that position where you are constantly engaging with leadership and with community. You really learn a lot. So I am very lucky to have had a wonderful experience.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, as far as Beverly goes, you start to wonder what kind of issues have you uncovered, what needs to be worked on?
Yeah, so Beverly overall is a great place to live.
Yeah.
I've lived here for about 9 years now.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
through that time, of course, Beverly's changed a lot. We've seen a growth in diversity and in awareness of the different various groups of people that have been here before, let's say 2023, and the groups that are coming in now, and the relationships between the two groups. So I think in my position right now, I've been more focused on supporting community as well as leadership, local businesses, advance their goals. And especially specifically on how to meet diverse community or how to reach diverse community or how to be more inclusive.
So if you look at the demographics from the federal government or anybody that keeps track of it, Beverly is predominantly European ethnicity, 80 some odd percent, and a scattering of different backgrounds besides that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem to be by nature very diverse, except one of the things that always sticks in my mind is years ago when I first moved into town, I decided to run for the school committee. So I'm going around my neighborhood, knocking on doors, getting signatures, all that good stuff. And one of the neighbors says, "You got to be careful of the Italians downtown." So already I said, "Oh yeah, sounds just like Providence." And that's where I grew up. And so I'm used to an environment where diversity is a matter of ethnicity. Where'd your parents come from? Where'd your great parents come from? Kind of thing. Do you see any of that still around in Beverly, or is that problem sort of faded away?
So diversity is very huge, right? So like the example you've just given could be nationality, ethnicity.
Yeah.
And even when we talk about color, it's changed over time. Like we can look into like the history and see there were times where Italians were not considered white. But now Italians are considered white. So when we are looking at marginalized groups, we might say make the mistake of probably excluding groups that are now included in the moment, but were not included in the past.
Yeah.
So in that context, yes, we do still see what the effects of those inequities that happened to, let's say, Italian community. We see those effects today. You know, we continue to see also the way that culture continues to come out in other ethnicities, right? So it's not always just all or nothing. I've noticed that sometimes it's a cycle. Like there'll be times where we're more focused on the Muslim community and there's a lot of bias on that. And then some people transition and we continue transition into equality for all people.
Yeah. And one of the problems I think that it comes down to is there is this inherent tribalism that who are my friends? Who can I count on? And again, another one of these old war stories. I spent a bit of time living in Chicago, in a white ghetto in the middle of a black ghetto on the south side of Chicago. Interesting environment. And there was a Catholic church I used to attend. And it had a rather mixed congregation. And I remember the priest getting up there one day, starting to talk. This is back in the 60s, when people started to recognize, hey, we got to do something about the problem. And the problem was, how do you treat people of color, kind of thing. And so the priest started giving a lecture on it. And he got in everybody's case about, and oh yeah, it's not only a difference in color, but it's a difference in shade. So that he was implying that the lighter your color, even in your own community, you get this disparity that, oh yeah, there's a difference between us. And this is one of the things that really bothers me, is we keep emphasizing the difference. And I hate using the word race, because in the species Homo sapien, there are no races. Some of our distant cousins, the Pantragulites, they got races, 3 to 5, depending on whose book you read. But amongst us, we're all the same.
True, and I'm so glad you're bringing this up. It's it's something I've been exploring lately as the DEI&B director for the city, and because I see a lot of us focusing, especially DI practitioners, on just the racial inequality and not asking ourselves of how it came to be, and then when we get to that place, we'll focus on the historical context, like. You know, we can start from the civil rights movement and how we've gone from there to here. But we never ask ourselves of the origin. So I'm originally from Kenya, and I'm deeply connected to the origin of man, because a huge part of my country is anthropologically protected, because there was a lot of archaeology practices that were down there. They found mitochondrial Eve, like deep roots of the history of man. And when I connect with people, that's where I'm coming from. We all have a very similar origin, but over time, because of our capability, of course, to evolve, we've changed, right? And we are aware of this diversity. So when I think of racial equity, I don't like to forget that we all come from one place. Like, we are all connected. But because of the biological information we passed on to each other, we look different, or the historical information we passed to each other, we've developed biases, we've developed narratives that are not true, eugenics, like all kinds of things popped up that have almost polluted the true narrative of who we are as Homo sapiens, our ability to connect and be united and have peace. And those contexts, like the negative ones, have influenced our systems. And I think that's why I wake up in the morning and I'm just not just looking at what has manifested today, but also acknowledging that we are connected, not to forget that, and to emphasize that we do have a common origin.
We had a number of discussions that we've recorded with Jack Quigley, the retired archaeologist, I guess, from Salem State. And we had a long series of discussions about a book called The Travel of Man, where this one
The Journey. I think you're thinking of The Journey of Man.
Yeah, Journey of Man,
yes. I think I know it.
Go back to that, and you start off with most of us with European background, we can trace our genetics all the way back to the Sand people of the Kalahari. And interesting story, but you get through it, and they traced the genetics. They were chasing the the Y chromosomes, which is why it's the journey of man kind of thing. Women went with them, obviously. And you end up with the Aborigines in Australia and the Navajo in New Mexico was where the story led, but yet everybody else is included in that.
Yeah.
And one of the funny parts that I used to have tweak Jack with is that about that time they found a body buried under a pub in Northern Ireland, and did a lot of research on it. It turned out the skeleton was 6,000 years old. And they did a recreation of what he would have looked like.
It was always fun.
Yeah. And he had the haplotype group 5 in his DNA, which means he had dark skin and blue eyes. And the curator of the museum in Dublin that oversaw this thing used to post his picture up and said, and see what's happened to us after 6,000 years without much sunshine? Because Ireland is notoriously kind of far north, and it's also rainy, so you don't get much sunshine there.
True, yeah.
So it's the situation that, we like it or not, we're all the same. And,
we are deeply connected, and I think like to bring it to government, that is the truth. Like when we walk the hallways of City Hall, and I see a lot of the people working there are not necessarily representing the entire community, I tend to ask myself why that is not happening. And because we are connected, right? As we're walking the streets, we feel deeply connected, but when it comes to how we access resources and services, or how we feel when we are in social circles, it's very different. And I think that's the part that really gets me in my work, and I'm super interested. And for Beverly, I'm very, very proud of the work we've done, especially in the last 4 or 5 months. Because when we started this work, a lot of us were wondering why. Why do we need this in Beverly? What is this about? We don't have racism here. And you know, we talk about the example of what happened in the school committee with Dr. Kainan McKenzie, and learning from these events that are already happening here, it allows us to really face the fact that there is some historical inheritance that has come with the story, because it's inevitable. But I think what I encourage people is to step away and not take the blame and absorb all that, because it's a reality check also, because you're not in that space. You're surrounded by your circle, like you were talking about. Like, these are the people I'm comfortable with. So you don't hear these stories. So my goal is to bridge storytelling between the two communities. How can we hear more stories from our incoming Latina families, our families that speak other languages other than English? And that is collaborating with Bootstraps, with high school, making sure that we are reaching out to people that might be left behind. And when I also talk about reaching out to people that might be left behind, there's also our community with disabilities. Being in government now for the year in the city, I'm still seeing our Commission on Disabilities not really moving forward, and not having enough representation, or not having voices coming forward that can help us to make the city more accessible, right? So I think that is all connected to that story of we all come from one place, but we've told each other stories about certain groups of people that they know deep inside that this is how I'm looked at, so I don't feel comfortable participating. So I think my goal is to encourage those that have been left behind to feel safer, and for those that have a step ahead to stop for a minute and maybe join a group, do a barbecue, and just get to know each other and see what you might be able to do.
Well, you mentioned an important thing. I think the people with disabilities, that I can, again, think back for over a long period of time of how do you describe somebody who has a disability? And I think of all the terms that have been used, and at the time, each one of these terms was a valid description of their problem. And little by little, each one of these terms became an insult. you don't talk about retarded people anymore. This is one of the examples, because an insult got to be, oh, he's just a retard. And people start to get into this very easily, and you can watch the language just carries the message forward that no matter what the problem is, there's something drastically wrong with the person. And that, in reality, it's not always the case.
Yeah.
So when we start to talk about diversity, I think one of the things that's getting lost in the message is, as you started to mention, there are more ways that we are diverse from each other, but they shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
And how do we get to the point where you look at what you can do and not what you can't do?
True. Yeah, there's a lot of in diversity. It's endless, especially when I start looking at people who have disabilities that are also in low-income spaces. They're not participating in local government. They're not able to. They don't have a voice most of the time because they're already struggling. And also, like you mentioned, the language over time has also made them feel like they need fixing or there's something wrong with them. And what I've realized is within this community, there's also talent, right? So if you are a leader in a position and you reach out to that person and you can make some adjustments in your office to support that person by acknowledging the diversity in that person. And then also acknowledging that they are an asset. Even though it might cost a little bit of money, right, from the company to make those adjustments. I think that's when we really think of resources.
Well, it keeps coming back to the idea of what can you do, not what you can't do. And to some extent, there has to be a tailoring or an adjustment to take advantage of their skills and abilities, and overlook some of the problems that
just
really
make
aren't
the space
problems.
make the space more inclusive so that they're able to do that which they were not able to do, right? And that which they cannot do, of course, you understand. You're not going to ask someone who cannot lift 40 pounds to do it. But you might be able to provide some kind of support or technology or something that they can use. So I'm really excited with where Beverly is going. This year we're working on a cultural recognition plan, and it's connected to language access because I've learned that language is how we connect. So how we bring each other closer is by making sure that we are translating our documents at City Hall so that they're accessible to everybody. That we are using our digital translating iPad. So when you arrive and you have a question at the clerk's office and you don't speak English, that you're able to do that. And then taking it further and saying, not only do we want you to have access to City Hall and our resources and services like everyone else, we also want you to be represented in the events that we're hosting. And that will be part of the cultural planning is what other communities, the Albanian community, the Czech community, the African community, the Latino community, what do they want? We're not just going to go to City Hall and whip up some events and say, we did this for you, but none of them are represented in the planning or attending. So I think if we can bring that healing for our communities that speak other languages other than English to participate more, then we'll see that trust starting to build and maybe more participation and representation.
Well, I think one of the issues comes down to where do you go to eat? And you think about the prevalence of pizza restaurants in town. That's strictly Italian community type of stuff. And there are several variations of Oriental in town, from Japanese to Chinese to Southeast Asian. There's a restaurant around the corner from where I live. It's Near East, so it's Eastern European kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was very disappointed they didn't have good baklava, but that's another story.
Yes, and you're right. Like, I think the food is important, arts, music, culture. And, I was just having this conversation about the word you just used, Oriental, and when languages are changing, some of those words are no longer proper representation of groups, right? And I remember her sharing with me how she was not aware, like, that this was a thing. And recently, a friend of mine also, I have mixed children, so my husband is Caucasian, so our daughters are biracial. And I was just in Kenya, and we use a lot of the words like mulatto, or they would call my daughters half caste. And I have to explain, like, that is not, they're like, but that's what we say. So it's languages, they're changing so fast in not just here, but also for Africa. I think they just don't understand why things are changing, or how it's not necessarily insulting, but it also hurtful. Like, it makes that person feel like you're associating them to a past that they no longer like connect with.
Well, you're getting to the belonging part of your job, really.
Yeah.
That somebody moves into town, they don't speak English well, they're much more comfortable with some other language. Yeah, we can make some accommodations so that the paperwork comes out in their language so they can handle it. I wish somebody could do that with the computer because I'm having problems. That's another story.
And the computer translations are not that good.
Yeah.
They don't make sense sometimes.
Well, that gets to be another part of the situation.
Yeah.
And you start down this path of trying to, okay, how do we make these people feel like they belong? And to some extent, that's where I get the point of the cultural food they eat.
Yeah.
And I know one of my jobs was international marketing, so I went to a lot of different places in Europe, and what on earth is that on my plate kind of thing. And when I look at something on the menu and I think I know what I'm ordering, and you get different. And you try it, and, oh, there's a reason these people eat this. That's good, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you start to accumulate an appreciation that, hey, everything that's foreign isn't bad.
True, yeah. And it adds that adventure.
And
then you can go back to your space, but you always know that there's so much diversity. We came from one place, but we all sprouted into different directions, and we all do not agree. I've not yet seen all of us agree, but we all believe in peace and love and community, and we all need to care for each other. And
you get to the point, I guess, that sooner or later, we've got to recognize we need each other.
Yep.
The city's got a tax bill, and everybody's got to pay for it.
Yep.
And the military's got armies and soldiers and sailors and Air Force, and everybody's got to help. You just can't say, well, only those people over there.
Yeah. Oh, it's Wangari's job to bring equity to the city.
So you mentioned early on that you wanted to put in a plug for Beverly.
Yes.
It's your turn.
I'm really happy. Thank you, George, for having me, and thank you, our viewers, for your love and support. I really want to encourage us to consider joining our boards and commissions. The City of Beverly is in need of volunteers. We have boards such as our Commission on Disabilities or Human Rights Committee, our Planning Board, that needs your voice, that needs representation from someone like you. And we're really encouraging people to apply through our website. Just go on the City of Beverly website, under boards and commissions, apply for to join board and commission. And the way it works, we'll get the email, it will go in front of mayor, we'll call you for an interview. And I look forward to meeting you either through joining a board or commission or just while we're walking our streets. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So I guess my one last pitch, I get to throw my 2 cents worth in.
Yeah.
Moved into a town in Connecticut, Ellington, Connecticut. First time we bought a house. And we were there about a month. And station wagon pulls into our driveway, and 2 ladies got out. They were the welcome wagon. And they came in and, hi, how are you, and all that sort of stuff, and welcome to Ellington. And one of the neat things that they did that I always remember is they had a little packet with them of gift certificates to all the businesses in town. So that, oh, you need a dry cleaner, here's a dry cleaner. You want to get your hair cut, there's a barber. So immediately it gets people into the point of view of, I don't have to go back to my old stomping ground to get things done.
Yeah.
I can get the same thing done here.
Yeah.
And I get
That's a great idea. Yeah.
10% off or $2 off or $10 off or something like that. It's a little bit of an incentive to try it. You may not like it, but at least it gets people who are new to the area to the point of saying, oh, I'll try this area, and it may not be so bad, because you're going to live there for quite some time.
Yeah.
And the quicker you get accumulated or assimilated into the town,
Yeah.
the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
So-
And know where things are. That's always the hardest part, or if
Oh,
you
yeah,
can
that's the
trust
other-
the place.
Yeah.
So this is good.
And
yeah.
went to one of these get-togethers at the library. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And one of the ladies said, I bought a house here, and I still don't feel like I belong. Oh. So there is a significant problem that I think needs to be worked on.
I agree. And that's why I felt strongly about adding belonging. And I
Yeah.
remember Mayor Cahill saying, it's your first day and you're already changing your job title.
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah.
Because I really understand that. Relocated residents that have relocated from other places even 20 years ago, or incoming residents from different countries, I think all feel the same way. And you can live in Beverly for 20 years and still struggle. So those are the cultural conversations that we have, because we have a reserved and very kind community, but we also in Beverly we are very reserved.
Yeah.
So we need activities to get us out of that shell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And as usual, at the end of the credits is my email address. And if you got some comments, please send them to me. And if you have a longer story you want to tell, there's room for you here at the table. And thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.